Hello everyone, Steve back at you with the third installment of exploring how chord charts could potentially have misinformed you about how to form chords. And you can check that video if you haven't seen it yet. I would do that first. Then we went on to look at how building chords kind of should happen. Again, a spin-off potentially from how chord charts are interpreted. And you can check out that video if you haven't seen it yet. And check both of them out before you see this video on how to change from one chord to another. And we'll do that right after this. The best way to learn how to play a song is to not practice the song. Let me explain. That's a pretty strange comment to make for sure, and I know people's heads are going right now. But there's some truth in this, and it's because when somebody sits down to learn a song, and in our case a tune that requires chording and strumming, and being able to change the chords on time as the song unfolds, more often than not, and quite naturally, a student has the song stuck in their head. So their measure of their success with the song becomes how well they think they sound while they're strumming away on the guitar, relative to how they remember how the song sounds in their mind. And that's your first mistake. As long as you have that template going on in your brain, your frustration level is just going to keep on rising regarding your ability to get from chord to chord to chord. And that's because if that's a problem for you, playing the song more really isn't going to solve it. What is going to solve it, and this is going to sound kind of duh and obvious, what is going to solve it is you need to practice getting from one of the chords in the song to the next chord, to the next chord, before you even really think about trying to play the song. Now I know right now there's a strong movement in guitar toward keeping students motivated to play the guitar by playing songs. Totally get it. It's exciting, it's invigorating, and it's useful. But if the problem with your playing is getting from chord to chord, you need to structure up a practice strategy that's going to help you get from chord to chord for that song. So what you do is you temporarily put the song sort of mentally aside. You're not trying to play the song, but you are trying to play and rehearse and practice chord changing that is in the song, if you get my idea here. So let's just pretend for a moment that you're sort of new to the guitar, or at least, you know, you've been hanging around it for, I don't know, 6 months or so, getting your fingers or trying to get your fingers used to making chord changes effortlessly, efficiently, so you can enjoy playing a song without feeling overwhelmed and confused and all these other features that tend to sneak in on you. And so, to get rid of that, if that's how you're feeling, we have to have a strategy for changing chords. And that specifically has to get worked on. I think very often in the literature covering how people learn best, this would be considered a form of deep practice. If you are interested in exploring that topic of how some people just seem to be able to push the boundary of what they can do, whether it's in sport or music or whatever else, way above the rest of us. Like they're just so darn good at it. The book, The Talent Code, I'll leave a link to it in the notes below, attempts to reveal why that's happening, because the premise of the book is suggesting that if anyone can commit to doing what I'm referring to here as deep practice, also referred to in the book, then there's not much excuse for witnessing quite a lot of growth, in your case, on the guitar. Does it mean you'll be a stellar, worldwide famous player? Probably not. But it does mean that you will be able to witness and feel ongoing growth on the guitar. And obviously that's what we want. We want to feel productive in the process. And this video series that I've been working on has been identifying some things that I think people are doing wrong, and they're getting in the way of that productivity. You get the idea. So let's pretend that there's a song you want to play, and it starts with a G chord, and then it has to go to a C chord. Now, some people out there will say, instead of going from the big G chord shape and leaving it and grabbing the big C chord shape, you can sort of cheat your way around that by playing the big G chord shape and then playing essentially what is called C add 9 as a substitute for the official C. It's a very pretty sound, and I don't mind that as a rearrangement or an arrangement, should I say, of the tune that you're trying to play. But what's more important here is that psychologically, you chose to bypass working on something that you feel you're not good at. And like I've always told my kids since they were little, everything you do, if you want to be good at it, is practice. You have no options. It just doesn't happen. And so by adopting an attitude that says, well, instead of going from this G to that C, someone out there might suggest to you, just do this instead, because it's easier. And it is. But in the process, you have bypassed, instead of climbing up and down the mountain, doing the work, you've just skirted around the bottom of the mountain and carried on your merry way. In my world, students often think they're being very clever when they come up with those kinds of solutions. But the truth is, you're using that as a way to get to the song or get to sounding cool quicker than you would otherwise get. And if that's what you do with everything you practice on the guitar, you're looking for these little shortcuts. In my opinion, you're simply selling yourself short. Don't avoid working on the tough bits. They're going to pay off. I don't understand why in guitar world this is a phenomenon that it's just rife with. Instead of doing the work, do this little trick and you get to bypass it. It doesn't make sense to me that you should adopt that kind of thinking, because it's going to carry on all the way through your studies, and you're still going to wonder a year from now, why are you not really any better than when you kind of started? It's because of this mindset you've adopted about, is there a shorter, quicker way to get this done? Yes, but it is not deep practice. The deep practice will reveal and produce for you the skill set that you're actually looking for, that you will not get by those quick hacks. Okay, I'm off my soapbox now, but I had to put it out there because I'm not about the quick hack. I'm about helping people do the right work to get the right results. And sometimes that work is not playing a song. It's sitting down and really focusing in on some aspect of a skill that you need in order to play the song. Okay, I think by now you get my drift. So the song, just making this up, maybe it goes simple. Just a 2-chord change from G to C. Again, try not to be thinking of the song at this moment. You've identified that you're having trouble actually getting to the chord. Your experience is more like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. Wait, hold on. Hold on. There. It's more that. Doing more of that will get you very good at doing more of that. You know, some would argue if you just keep repeating that process, it'll get shorter and shorter and quicker. And maybe, maybe not. Depends on the person. But what will fix that problem is to work on the problem by creating a different strategy, adopting a different strategy to help you make the chord change in a more organic way. So here's the strategy that I adopt with my students and I use for myself all the time. And it's simply this. I mean, there's no whoa, deep insight about it. If you're having trouble getting from one chord to another chord, that's a clear example that your mind, your brain, isn't completely clear on how to organize your fingers as you leave one chord and go to the other. It's not a sort of a you problem, it's a physiological problem. And wrapped up in that physiology is our emotion and our ego and our frustrations that can potentially make us want to stop playing because we're not getting the results we want. Again, you're not getting the results you want because of the way you're going about it. Let's fix that. The assumption is simple. You've got to get from a G chord to a C chord. You know you won't be there on time. And by time, what I mean is, you know, that sense of pulse that's in the song. So let's pretend you're perceiving this in our tune, and you've got to go being able to change those chords on time is with reference to that pulse. That's why people work with metronomes. Work with a metronome or a drum machine or something that helps you refine the time. If you find it hard, celebrate that. It means that's a good thing. It is hard. And then you do it next day and the day after, and you pay more attention to it. You might slow the drum machine down and be able to make the chord changes then. If you stay with it, you're forcing your brain to rethink what it thinks you want it to do. You don't want to just get from one chord to the next, because you can't. You want to get from one chord to the next in the most efficient way, without any sense of confusion and without any sense of tension, you know, in the process. So here's what I do. Because I already know you can't make the change on time. That's the assumption here. Then let's give ourselves a structured amount of time to make the change. Whew. How simple was that? And yet, you know, it's not really that earth-shattering, but it's very effective. Let me demonstrate for you. 1, 2, 3, 4. 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. There's more going on in there than immediately meets the eye. There's a certain tempo that I've set for myself, and it could turn out that I've set it too quickly. I still can't make the chord change. But what I did is I gave myself, because we were playing more or less in 4/4 time, 4 beats or 4 taps of time for each chord. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's what I mean by the 4 taps per chord. Because I know I can't make the chord on time, I will give myself happily extra time to get from one chord to the next. But I'm only going to give myself the equivalent of those same 4 pulses to get there. You are going to have to determine at what tempo will allow you within those 4 beats to get to the next chord. And here's an image that you can look at to help you understand what's happening there. You've got a chord at the front end. You've got an equivalent measure of 4 extra beats. That's why the 4 is there. That you can make the chord, organize it, think about it, and be ready to play it on the next measure. That's the idea. And you get really, really good at that. Now let's talk about what it takes to get really, really good at that. In the previous video with regards to building chords, I had suggested that once you're familiar with the shape of it, it would be a good idea to start training your fingers to maybe grab 2. Let's say the chord is G. Instead of building the chord with the 1 finger at a time idea, again, potentially born of the chord chart that you originally saw, you decide, I'm going to try to see if I can get 2 of my fingers of that chord down together at the same time. And then get the other 2 down as quickly as I can. And then maybe I'll push it and try to get 3 fingers down and the final finger as quickly as I can. You're doing it in a stepwise manner, but you're only moving forward to the next complex possibility once the one you're working on is boring you. You can actually do it so well that you need a new stimulus. And the new stimulus is to add an extra finger into the mix to be able to purposely, this is an important principle here, purposely make it harder for you again. So the idea is you get used to doing something, and once it feels comfortable, you add an extra element into the mix that forces your brain to go, oh, this is new and it's hard, so I'm going to work on that until I get good at it. The time frames, I can't tell you what they're going to be. It depends on you, your commitment, you know, just how often you pick up the guitar, all kinds of factors. But the principle remains the same. That it's not, it starts hard and then it gets easier and then you're done. It starts hard, it gets easier, and then you add an element of more hard, and then that gets easier, and you add another element of more hard, and that gets easier. That's the systematic approach that I'm talking about. So at this stage, I'm going to assume that more or less you're very comfortable with the shape of the chords, but getting to the back and forth is the issue. So I've got the G. Now I've got 4 beats of time to get my fingers off of the G chord and onto the C chord. I hope that makes sense so far. And here's the trick. As soon as the G chord has finished playing, don't waste time. Release the fingers and start using the full extent of those 4 free beats of time to go ahead and make the C chord. You want to be able to build the C chord in such a manner and at such a comfortable speed that by the time beat 4 comes around, you feel the sensation that you're actually ready to play, but it's not time for you to play yet. Like you're ahead of those 4 free beats. You're just waiting now to be able to play the chord. You don't play it as soon as you make it. You only play it after those 4 beats. And the better you get at this, you'll realize you'll have the chord built by beat 2, or beat 1, or beat 3, or whatever the case may be. And that'll give you the feeling that you're very comfortable, you know what's coming next, your fingers know what to do. That's what we want to rehearse. So there's that image, showing what it looks like with 4 beats in between, at a certain tempo. Again, you have to decide what that's going to be. That could take a bit of trial and error. Of course, if you were here with me live, we could sort that out right now, but I don't know what your situation is, so you'll have to figure that out. What I'm tapping is a pretty reasonable place to start. Maybe just a tad slower. If you need a reference, okay, use that. Plug it into your drum machine or your metronome app, whatever you're using, and set that up close to around that. You know, it's like, I don't know, 60 beats a minute, somewhere in there. Okay. So let's pretend you've been doing that. Maybe you've been moving from the G chord to the C chord for a few days, and you're finding that with that 4 beats of free time, you're able to get to the C chord and have it completely ready to play effortlessly. Of course, you're not playing the song yet, you see. This is what I meant at the beginning. The best way to practice a song is not practice the song. Practice the elements of the song, the musical structures of the song that you're having trouble with. Do that. The song will take care of itself once you have that stuff all fixed. If you don't fix it and you're trying to play the song, again, you'll just be frustrated and, upset because you don't sound like the way the song sounds like. And it's the wrong way to go about it. Logically now, at the tempo that you set originally for yourself, boom, there's the next step. We're still not there. We have the same speed. This won't change. You're going to use this for a fair bit of time. Again, whatever you're choosing. But notice that the change time in between the 2 chords is not 4 beats, but 3. So it would look something like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Notice that at this point I'm not asking you to have all your fingers come down at once. This strategy comes about from the reality that right now you can't get all fingers down at once, because you just can't. Your physiology isn't ready to do it yet. So whatever sequence of fingerings you need to put down, go ahead and continue that, because it's going to go away with this strategy, trust me. But for the time being, build it however you need to, but just make sure it's ready and built by the end of those 3 beats. Now, of course, if you think about it, the effect of that is, at the same tempo, you have actually changed from one chord to the next by getting rid of 1 beat, therefore you're actually getting there quicker. It's not going to be a resounding sensation of, my gosh, look how much quicker I am. It's subtle, but you are getting there quicker. Even though you're looking down and listening to your playing and thinking, oh, that's not a big deal. It isn't, in a sense, but it's probably the biggest deal you need to experience, because the measurement that your metronome or your tapping is giving you hasn't changed. That means you're getting to the other chord slightly more quickly, even though you don't feel like it took much out of you. So then you might spend a day with those 3 beats in between. Then, boom, you go to 2 beats. You get the logic here. This is all that's, and you're back to the same tempo, and now it looks like this. 1, 2. 1, 2. 1, 2. 1, 2. And by nature, because you've kept the tempo the same, but you've reduced the amount of time in between the chords, and you don't move to the shorter time in between chords until the previous timing is comfortable for you. I mean, you can't get it wrong, comfortable. Don't be, oh, let's just get past this and move on to the faster one. That's going to be more interesting. I know the temptation is there. Don't do it. So the underlying sort of unspoken process here that I'm talking about is really learning to be patient with the changes of your own physiology until that physiology, mostly up here in your mind, your brain, has wired up your fingers so accurately with lots of repetition and patience and time that you can't get these things wrong anymore. They're just wired into you. They begin to feel like, what was ever the problem? Well, there was a problem, but now you fixed it. And the reality is, most times when you're fixing these things, they take longer than the current wave of teaching is suggesting. Realize that, I mean, I'm on YouTube, I get it, but I don't teach hacks, I don't teach tricks, I don't teach clickbait procedures that say, you know, master your fretboard in 10 minutes, because it's not true. It might look like it's true, but it isn't. And I don't know how many times I have to keep repeating that. If you're the kind of person that really wants to get this stuff, you have to be ready to put the time in, to put the repetition in. It doesn't mean you have to slog it out. You can do this in small periods of time. And let your body tell your mind, now you're ready to move to a more difficult level, having mastered the previous one. That's the underlying psychology of what we're doing here. And eventually it'll just become a dominant way for you to learn anything, let alone guitar. And you will always learn it well. It's the way the brain needs the information. Short hits of tips and tricks and things like that They might reveal something new to you in the moment, which excites you, but in the long term that fades away, and you still have gained no further real true insight into what's going on. So don't do that to yourself. So essentially, of course, by going from 4 beats to 3 beats to 2 beats in between, you are witnessing changes in your ability to play faster, to change the chords faster. That's pretty cool. Let's go to 1 beat, and it would look like this. And there's the image for you. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1. 1. 1. At that same tempo that you've always worked with, that can't change. That has to stay the same. Otherwise, this whole process is moot. It's like the graph paper won't make sense if the distance between the graph lines vary. It just won't make any sense. So that's what's happening here. Then, of course, the next logical step is to start trying to aim for getting from one chord to the next with none of those beats in between. And you keep repeating this process through either a series of chords, maybe there's a series of 5 chords that you need to play through, or if you have to isolate it down to 2 chords for a while. Either way, number one, you need to be prepared to put in that deep practice. This is deep practice. This isn't trying to play the song yet. This is learning to play the bits that make up the song. You know, think of it like building a brick wall or a stone wall. The wall only manifests itself once you've learned how to stack the rocks together and cement them all together. Then the wall presents itself. It just comes out of that process. Likewise, the song comes out of this process. But we tend to do it in reverse. We give people a song and we teach them, here's the chords and here's the shapes and here's a strumming pattern. And it's all well and good at the very, very beginning, but it's very surface information. We're going down a little deeper here. But this is a very good strategy to help you with many aspects of learning the guitar. But in this case, of course, it's about getting from one chord to the next. Now, the beauty of it is, at the front end, it can seem very tedious. It's new. You need to be dedicated to it. But in the long term, it becomes an automatic approach that you would take to learning, and it speeds up. Like, it happens very naturally over time. It won't, of course, at all if you don't do it. I mean, the connection is so simple. So instead of avoiding things that are hard, realize that things that are hard to do are the things that your brain needs to force it to make changes. When I do this, what I mean is all the neurons coming together in a new pattern that help you change your fingers properly, or help you with a strum pattern, or help you with learning more vocabulary, or whatever it is. That's what learning is. You're forcing the brain to shift into something it wasn't the day before. That's what learning is. And so, if it's hard, realize that it's not going to stay hard. People just avoid hard, and don't do that to yourself. That's where the learning happens. And at the beginning, yeah, it's a bit hard, and it gets easier and easier and easier over time. This is me saying that difficulty is getting less and less and less. And then you reintroduce another element, perhaps another finger, or less time in between, something that re-stresses your system, particularly your brain, and it goes, oh, well, this is new and this is hard, until it isn't. And then you repeat this until there's really nothing more to repeat, because that pathway of helping your fingers change and quickly and in the right shape has laid itself down inside your mind. If you can adopt and understand that perspective, you'll have no trouble playing the guitar. But you do need to make sure that you're committed to that process. So, I hope that makes sense to you. And I personally use this in my own learning, and I use it with my students. And it can be a hard sell at times, but I don't know any other alternative, truly. You know, I've been playing for a long time. I can sit down and shuffle through a video that says whatever, master blah 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 in 3-4 easy steps. We're smart enough to realize that that's just clickbait. We're smart enough to realize that something is going to be missing from that tutorial. We're smart enough to realize that even though we might get a bit of a high from that tutorial because it gave you something new that you've never experienced, that doesn't mean that it's been deeply practiced. The literature generally says when you're trying to learn something really new from the beginning to a point where you're getting a sense that you have some control over it and you're feeling a bit better about your progress, minimally 30 days. Little bit each day. More commonly, it can run up to 90 days. That's what it takes to get changes to occur in your mind so that this stuff out here starts to feel easier. 90 days, 3 months, not a long time. Could be shorter, might be longer, everybody's different. But it's within that time frame. And if that gives you a better sense of what your expectations should be of yourself, I hope you feel better as a result. That you don't need, it's not going to happen immediately. It takes time. And I know people hate to hear that. It takes time. Because we don't live in an era where time seems to be important anymore. We need everything fast, blah, blah, blah. But if you follow this strategy, I guarantee you're going to be able to witness results from it, and the important thing is you will, by its nature, you are forced to repeat it so much that it will lay itself down on your brain in a manner that you're not remembering anything. You have acquired a skill that has become subconscious. You're doing it in an automatic way eventually. And that's why other people might look at you and go, oh, you're so talented. You're born with such a gift. You worked darn hard at it. They just didn't see you do it. And we're not worried about some people who have what we might call a natural inclination toward music or anything. They exist. You've heard me say this many, many times on this channel. You're not interested in that. You can be motivated by it, but don't layer it upon yourself such that you'll never be able to play. I'm no Jimi Hendrix. I'm no Joe Satriani, but I admire their playing tremendously. So, you know, we have to fit in and contribute what we can. But this is a very, very effective approach to practicing. If you found the video helpful, you know what to do. Leave some love. Share it, like it, whatever people do these days on YouTube with their videos. And leave me a comment down below what you think of this approach. Until next time, Steve Dempster, GuitarEvolutions.com. Check out the website. And I'll be back soon. See you soon. Bye.